4 stars is purple, 5 stars is gold, so what is this rainbow color? She's gotta be the first 6-star unit. She gotta be good. I mean, just look at the animations. She is the only animated character in the game, so she gotta be good. Let us take a look at her kit. This is Helo-Catena. She is a Caro faction unit. First skill is called Venting Hatred. Costs 1 AP. It deals damage to all enemies, plus inflicts bleeding, equal to the damage dealt. You gain a permanent power, and keep in mind bleeding is a DLT that lasts for 1 turn only. Next skill is called Chain of Blood. It costs 1 AP. You lose 10% current HP, deal random damage twice, and inflict bleed. And when this card is used, it is added back to your hand, and after 3 uses, it adds Bloodthirsty Mace instead. Now Bloodthirsty Mace costs 4 AP, it deals nuclear damage with 500% power bonus, triggers 30% bleeding, so in other words if the enemy has 100 bleed, you deal 30 damage, and restores 15% of lost HP. And it transforms into Chain of Blood after use. And it has Ready. Ready means that if the card is held at the end of the turn or discarded, AP cost is subtracted by 1. So I know this sounds kind of confusing, but what it means is you can use Chain of Blood 3 times in a row, and then you can use Bloodthirsty Mace. And then it goes back to Chain of Blood, and then you just cycle. For the ultimate, if you have Devour, you draw 1 card, and reduce the AP cost of all of Helot's cards by 1. And for this turn, Helot's attacks inflict 75% bleed, and the ultimate also deals damage itself. Now for the Rouse, you add a Chain of Blood to your hand, your cards gain Retain, and you increase base damage by 11%. Now for dupes, for the first dupe, it gives your strike cards 15% crit rate and crit damage boost. Now based on testing, I actually never saw that boost, but either way. Defense now triggers 15% bleed to all enemies. In other words, if the enemy has 100 bleed, they will take 15 damage. If you have 2 dupes, then Venting Hatred, the AoE attack. If HP is below 50%, it doubles the power boost. We also upgrade Bloodthirsty Mace from Ready 1 to Ready 2. That means the AP cost drops from 4 to 2 instead of 4 to 3 after 1 turn, so that is very good. Now for free dupes, at the start of the battle, you add a card that lets you choose any command card you want at the start of the battle. So that's really good. And Chain of Blood breaks shields and prevents shield gain for 1 turn. Now I never came across an enemy with shields that were actually unbearable, but I think she is the only unit in the game who can break shields completely. But unfortunately, it is locked behind several dupes, so probably not worth it just for that. I don't think so. Now her 4th dupe and beyond I don't think is needed. Her super ultimate adds a Venting Hatred and Chain of Blood to your hand, so that's fine. Whatever. Now all of that sounds kind of confusing, but how do you actually play her? Well, I would classify her as a semi-burst DPS, so you want to do most of your damage during her ultimate. Now her Rouse gives her cards Retain, so this allows you to more easily store her cards in your hand until her ultimate. If you have 1 dupe, you should retain her attack, her strike card, as it gives temporary crit stats, and the defense card as it bursts the bleed DLT. Her ultimate also reduces the AP cost to 0, so that's good. I do recommend grabbing this standard banner light cone Merciful Nurture that gives you +2 hand size limit to help with the hand size. And during the ultimate damage window, you want additional power as Bloodthirsty Mace deals damage based on 500% power. So for that I recommend the standard banner light cone Glutinous Fable, which gives you power every turn based on how much HP you lost during the last turn. So if you're fighting an enemy that deals nuclear damage to you, well, you can return the favor. You would also want other Caro units, so you will more likely have the Embryo ready during her ultimate. I'd probably stick with the free-to-play Caro unit you get for free, Aegis. She can make enemies vulnerable, which increases their damage taken by 50%, and she can potentially stun enemies for 1 turn. And if the enemy is vulnerable, using stone decomposition is both free and draws a card. I think the standard banner character Leia is also very good. Her rouse gives her 15% fusion each time she plays a card. She also heals and gains a bit of power. Now after you use her ultimate with Devour, you draw one card and reduce all your cards' cost by 1. Then the order you used your cards should be either Strike or Venting Hatred for crit stats and power, followed by Chain of Blood to deal damage and inflict bleed, followed by Bloodthirsty Mace to deal nuclear damage and Burst Bleed DLT, and then finish off with Defense to Burst Bleed DLT. Now that sounds great on paper, but in practice we usually run into a problem with AP. After using Chain of Blood, the following Chain of Blood or Bloodthirsty Mace does not have the AP cost reduction. So there is an AP issue to deal with. I recommend using the free-to-play Chaos Karen Waifu, who heals, shields, removes slow, and her ultimate adds a Marvelous Cuisine, which essentially gives you free AP. And if you can manage to discard Bloodthirsty Mace, you can use Ramona's ultimate to play it at 0 cost, and shuffle Inspiration into your deck, which gives you 1 AP. So that's why I say semi-burst, since the odds of you managing to get 2 Bloodthirsty Maces or even free is very low in my opinion. So overall, she is relatively simple to use. Just try to use up all of her cards during her ultimate and you should be good to go, okay? Now how does she compare to other DPSs? Is she broken? Well, unfortunately Morimens does a good job of making character kits mostly unique. So it's not like Cat Fantasy or Honkai Star Rail where I can bring up a calculator to see who is the best. But I would say she is my strongest DPS right now, and relatively easy to use. My other DPS, this girl, needs some time to marinate in the fridge as she stacks poison on the enemy that lasts indefinitely. But Helot can very quickly deal nuclear damage and quite consistently as she retains cards, and her rouse adds cards, and her ultimate adds cards, so it's very unlikely for you to not have her cards when you need them. And her third dupe also breaks shield, so that could be extremely good. And she's a rainbow and animated unit, so she gotta be good, okay? She gotta be good.